needs to give it up. Vince needs to give it up. Vince needs to give it up. I finally finished the Taker documentary like 2 months later. It was amazing. Almost brought me tears to my eyes, and it made me understand when you're at that age and you're ready to retire, you don't want to let go because that's all you know. It's all like Taker. That's all he knew for his whole life. The man had a basketball scholarship. He ended up ditching that to go be a professional wrestler, and he became arguably the greatest character in pro wrestling history. Vince has taken this thing from his father, from WWE, and turned it into this global enterprise. Just think about himself. Do you really believe he wants to put yourself in his shoes, saying, you know what, I'm going to let go and allow my kids and my son-in-law to run this thing that I've known since my father left it to me at the age of, 35 or 40 years old? How hard would that be for somebody? And again, I'm not going to sit here. Maybe people may believe I'm being biased for Vince. Maybe I am, maybe I'm not. But yeah, he doesn't make the perfect decisions. Yeah, the show has been lackluster as of late. You know, a lot of guys are leaving and unhappy. But put yourself in his position. Would you want to be able to let it go? And I try to see myself when I'm 60, 70, God willing, I make it there. Would I ever want to let go of the sports hit list? Would I ever want to let go of the classroom and retire and say, damn, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? So I think when people get to that age, it's very, very, very difficult to just let go and let somebody else take control for something that you know. It's the same thing as a basketball player. Vince Carter played basketball for 4 decades. He finally put it to bed. You get what I'm saying? So I think sometimes we underrate that mentality because we're not there. That, listen, when you retire, that's it. You ain't going to be like you're not doing your job no more. So I think for Vince, it's hard for him to let go because number one, he has his ego. He wants to be in control, and that's all he knows.
I remember speaking about this on like a few episodes back in terms of taking the devil's advocate side for Vince. Like, and I agree. You know, I put myself into Vince's shoes in terms of how and why he books or why his company is a certain way. You know, and I think a lot of that is because, you know, when you get something that big, especially your company, like all those years ago from your father, it's all you know, and it's hard to give up. Now, in terms of his decision-making along the way since he acquired, you know, the WWF from his father back in '82, when he went public, he's had to answer and basically bend his back a lot to appease the stockholders and other people he let into his company. Because before then, it was just him and everybody else that knew the business. So now when you let people from the outside in, dictating everything that you do, sponsors and everything else, it's very hard for you to run the company the way you do, the way you want to. And it's also handicapped them in a lot of ways as well. You know, and when he went public back in '99, he started to see a slow decline back to from where you promote more than one big star at a time, going back to that Hogan model, you know, to appease, you know, your stockholders and what your sponsors want to see out of your company. And I think, you know, he's been strapped for that. And I think he's been unfairly, you know, been criticized for that. And, you know, you got to take into account what he has to go through when he's in these board meetings.
It's that struggle between, like, you know, tapping into that human element of Vince and recognizing his celebrity and his responsibility, you know, in that public forum. Because if it's a select few, you know, we can understand it. We've understood it with guys like Billy Gunn and et cetera, et cetera. You know what I mean? Like all these people who are like, you know, you could have been something, had one or two different things, like could have put you over. But, you know, there's like a lot of people. That being said, I think that, you know, and Carl, and the fact that, you know, you brought this to light, Randy expounded upon it. It's one of those, it's one thing to say, it's another thing to do. Like, it's one thing to basically say, like, yo, we could push everyone and we could basically do all the things and please the crowd. But I think a big issue as to why, to Randy's point, why, like, going public and you know, the fact of pushing one star at a time, it's been a big issue, and it led to a thing like this, is that for a long time, the WWE was recognized as the show in town. Not necessarily the biggest show in town, but the show in town. And, like, after a while, like, you kind of pick and prod at, you know, certain little things, because there was bad things about the Attitude Era that nobody really looked into up until recently, essentially.
Yeah. You know what it is too? It's a matter of, like, I feel like now because we have AEW, people are just ready to just, like, especially the hit list contributors.
Entanglement,
right? The hitless contributors are so quick to jump on the WWE. They're like, they're like, oh, it's so bad. Vince treats his wrestlers bad. Tony Khan treats his wrestlers better. Blah blah. And I'm like, and I watched AEW last week, and I was just like, they got a great tag division. That's it. I'm being straight up honest with you. Like, I watched the entire 2-hour show, and I'm like, they do a great job with their tag division. And I love tag team wrestling, and I wish WWE would do that with their tag team. They don't. But like, I give it to them. The Young Bucks and the Butcher and the Blade match, Falls Count Anywhere, was amazing. You know, I give it to them when it comes to tag team. But their main event is not. You're looking at the main event was a tag team match. It wasn't the championship. So, you know, what are we discussing here? You know what I'm saying? Why wasn't the championship in the main event? So I think sometimes because AEW is that fresh new toy, people are already pounding on WWE. And because the ratings aren't saying that WWE is doing great, especially with the COVID and everything else, that's why they're taking a big hit.
It's that balance, man. Because it's like, you know, WWE is one of those things where, you know, we've been conditioned to think that Vince gives you what he wants. And then AEW is like, we give you what you want. We give you a progressive style. We give you transgender wrestling. We give you tag team wrestling. We give you John Moxley Unleashed. We give you X, Y, and Z. And then, you know, at the end of it, you kind of get a certain thing of where, like, there's so much convoluting stuff because wrestling fans and fans in general, like, our minds do change at a million times a second. I hearken back to Smart fans. We're all sports fans here. Carl, you're probably going to get a kick out of this. I hearken back Smarks or Marks as Knick fans. Because at a certain point, we kind of panic and we're just like, yo, we want something new. No, listen, hear me out.
We on a wrestling podcast and you had to talk about your Knicks. Listen. Come on, man.
Listen. I'm not trying to extend it. Here's what it is, because I'm making a comparison. After you see a bad Raw, you're like, yo, I don't like this, man. They're doing it dirty. And then they hot shot it. It's like, yo, I thought Cesaro was doing good. Oh, Cesaro had a poor match that was not well received. Oh, he's going to get booked down the card. And that's essentially what happens, because that's how John Cena's had, the 16, 17 titles. That's how, you know, the Hogan era happened, where it was like, oh, Bret Hart's not doing well. Let's put it back on Bret. Let's put it back on Hogan, or things of that nature.
Yeah. You know what? They do pigeonhole themselves. I'm not going to take up too much time because I know the other guys got to talk, but they do pigeonhole themselves. And I hate this thing where they rely, like right now, right? I know Randy Orton and Drew are going to headline SummerSlam for the title. Why? You know, like Randy Orton's 40 years old, has been in the business for 20 years. He's like, 12-time champ, I believe, something like that. Why is he having a main event championship opportunity when you got guys like other guys who could have used that or deserve that? You're pigeonholing yourself because you're built on your older part-timers or older talent to help carry you because you didn't spend enough time building up your newer talent. And that's how they pigeonhole themselves, because they keep relying on the Randy Ortons and the John Cenas and the Brock Lesnars and all those guys who were mega stars when I was in high school to bail you out. And it's been 20 years. How much longer can those guys consistently bail you out without you building a new star? And that's the one thing I'll say Vince has done a terrible job with. He hasn't built new stars.
Yeah. Let's tag you and Kid Ty. What you got to say?
Okay, a lot's been said. I hope not to have too much comparison. I will say this, look, going back to the original point of Eric Young, you know, many talents over the years saying that, you know, Vince isn't a great leader, you know, talent's been misused, you know, they've missed out on a lot of money. We're talking about business. They've missed out on a lot of money opportunities. And I'm gonna just put it like this. The things that we talked about last week are still some of my sentiments this week. You know, while I understand the devil's advocate role for this, it's obviously not as easy said as it is done. The fact that you are doing, you still have some sort of responsibility to go about your company a certain way, because business doesn't really have a soul. Business doesn't have this structural model other than to adapt and continue going. And a lot of the different representatives and people that you can have, the pieces that you can have that can appease some of these stockholders or some of these partnerships like GLAD and whatnot, they are, you know, subject to change, just like anything else. And in terms of making new stars and the talents they've walked out on, not only have been a lot of these talents been successful in other promotions, but they were pieces that could have been great pieces